Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now we're reviewing Severance Season 1, and today we are on Episode 8 titled, What's for Dinner? If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, Sarah, start us off with a summary for Episode 8.
The team prepares a plan. Mark attends Devin and Rickon's party.
Nice. I feel like these episode summaries are getting more and more vague and suspenseful as the show goes on.
Which is smart, you know?
It's very smart. It is very smart indeed. I think like one of the previous ones was like, the team unites together. And you're like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Against what or for what, we don't know. But it is important to know that they united. So,
all right. What is your episode title for Episode 8?
Mine is Glory.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Many dimensions of that word we could think about.
Mm-hmm.
My episode title is Waffle Party.
Yes, the waffle party is quite an experience.
It is quite the party. Lots of shenanigans happen, and we must talk about that at some point. But first, overall, we are here. We are the second to last episode of the season. Sarah, I'm so curious your thoughts about how episode 8 unfolds.
I think elements of this episode work really, really well. I was particularly impressed with the editing. And when we see real life Irv painting and how all of that is shot and like Motorhead comes in like blaring and this is like really, really intense. And then later in the episode, we see him painting intercut with other dramatic things happening. And so I was just really impressed by how this episode was edited and cut together to really help increase that feeling of tension, but also helping us feel, I guess it's almost like the weight of the stakes of what they're doing. And so I was just really, really impressed by that. I think I'm just so curious where they're going to go with the finale, because I feel like there's a lot of ways that this could go really wrong. And I'm not sure. This feels like one of those seasons of a show where it seems like the writers kind of wrote themselves into a corner. And I'm not sure how they're going to get out of it. So I think that's one of my main just things that I've been wondering. And yeah, a lot of drama happens between our characters, which is very exciting. So it's just, it's setting everything up, which I'm sure is going to be a very dramatic finale, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to land this plane in a way that's satisfying. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious where this is going to go.
Yeah, that curiosity. I'm also intrigued to hear your thoughts on how this shakes out in the finale that we are going to review in our next episode. It definitely feels like every storyline is heating up in its temperature. You know, I think it's notable that some big things happen with, for example, Corbell being fired, and for the longest time, we've been kind of watching her arc and wondering where it will go and feeling the sense of like, she's kind of like her own independent agent and working outside of the existing bounds of what Lumen wants her to do. And so there's some interesting stakes that I think can be ushered in with her now being fired, and like she is no longer grounded. And so what will she do next is kind of a fun question to think about. And then obviously we see, I guess, continued progress forward with our MDR team and them rebelling in a very real, very tactical way. And that's kind of the cliffhanger that we end on this episode. So I think the biggest thing that I remembered about this episode is the twisted nutcracker show that Dylan gets to experience of these dancers that come through in these very, very strange outfits with like these paper mache heads of what I'm assuming is like different Egan or Lumen founders or CEOs. I don't know what is going on there, but that image was definitely seared into my mind, and I associate it with the show in general because it is so artsy fartsy and so jarring, but also I'm just grasping for what it all means. And I think there's a lot of things in the show that are like that fall into this bucket. The goats is a great one. The Nutcracker one is another great one. And I'm just wondering why. Like what is this supposed to mean? Because I'm trying to understand, but I think it's in some movies or TV, you like want to lean in to try and figure it out. And this one I'm kind of just like, okay, why? What does this mean? I don't really get it. And I'm slightly frustrated by it too. So, what do you think this whole Nutcracker experience that was the waffle party for Dylan? What does it mean? Do you have any theories?
Yeah, it reminded me of Eyes Wide Shut, which is quite an experience. There's a lot about that scene that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is just trying to be an homage to Eyes Wide Shut, and that was like enough for me. Is that the creative team behind this was like, oh, we need to include a weird thing. Eyes Wide Shut is iconic. Let's combine the two. So I was fine with just like leaving it there, but I do think that you bring up a good point in that there's so many odd and unusual things in this show that I don't know about you, but I've almost become, I guess, like desensitized to it. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, there's a dude nursing goats. Cool. Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut party. Yeah, fine. You know, like
Yeah.
it's just even like the pre-waffle party egg bar, you know, like there's all of these like weird things in this show. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we can just keep going. Like I don't feel an intense desire to sit and like sift through and try and come up with like a
Mhm.
meaningful theme or something behind this. And I think it goes back to something that we talked about a little bit in our previous episode of I don't trust this show to have that much meaning in things. Obviously the corporate structure and Lumen and all of that, I think that there's a lot of meaning in that stuff. But I think some of this like really off the wall weird stuff, I don't trust that to have meaning or significance other than to just be weird. And I could be wrong. There could be a lot of meaning there and I'm just like missing it because I've chosen to like disassociate from the show. But yeah, that Eyes Wide Shut waffle party experience. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Whatever. Let's move on.
Yeah. No, that's a good coping mechanism is to be like, I don't know. That was weird. But it is, I think, indicative of like because of the quantity and volume of how many weird things are happening that ironically each one loses its uh impact or its effect on me, you know? And I get more and more demotivated with each new weird thing when all of the slew of the other ones weren't really explained yet. Like I'm still back thinking about what the goats mean. So I don't have mental space to also wonder what the hell this trippy sequence is also supposed to signify. And I think that you bring up an interesting point, which is that somehow the show has not created that feeling of trusting that it's all going to be explained. Because there's other, storytellers and films or TV shows that like you're like this is gonna come together, or at least like I want to like mull on these ideas. And I get more frustrated with each weird thing that happens in this show. So this is gonna bode well for when we review season 2, and I'm gonna have all these feelings going into season 2 for unresolved things from season 1.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because the show keeps bringing up some of these other things. So in this episode,
Yeah.
Kelly makes a joke about the goats and saying that like the goats are the ones that lay the eggs. And then in the Eyes Wide Shut waffle party, one of the dancers, he has, I think it's a male, I don't know. The dancer has I think it's a ram's head on, which is not a goat, but I would say it's goat adjacent. So there's this like weird thing where the goats are still showing up. And I'm like, okay, so this is a recurring theme now. It's showed up in multiple episodes, and you're just not going to do anything with it. So I just, and maybe they will do something. I don't know. Maybe episode 9 will be the revelation of the goats, and everything will be tied up with that
Mhm.
weird storyline. That would be lovely if we could learn about why the goats are there. But there's so many other open-ended things that are actually consequential to the plot that I'm not sure that the show is going to be able to tie all of those up in a satisfying way. Not to mention all of the other weird little things that are happening
Mm.
too.
Yep. We are continuing to be balls of questions. One of the things that I think is significant to, you could argue, to the plot is the Miss Casey reveal from the previous episode. And then we learn in this episode that Miss Casey is being fired, which is a very ominous way to say that she's gonna die. What would tell me your thoughts about how they play out some of the Miss Casey parts of this plot line?
Yeah, it's pretty striking some of the things that happen with her. And she says the line, "My life has only been 107 hours long." That's like 4.5 days. Like, so it's just wild to like put that in perspective that she is only, I guess, like awakened for these wellness checks, and then she goes back to, I don't know, I, I'm going to say back to sleep for lack of a better term, even though that's not the correct term. And so that's just interesting to think about
Mhm.
that in that context. I don't know. It was interesting learning that about her, and learning that she's not the same as everybody else
Yeah.
that we've encountered. And I mean, obviously we knew that based on, the fact that she's his dead wife. But yeah, I think it's interesting to think about how all of these different employees are having a very different experience. And not everyone is severed like the MDR folks are. And so it just makes me wonder what other types of situations are present here, and what are some of our other characters' stories like, particularly the ones that only show up every once in a while. Like, who are they in the world? Are they alive or dead? Like, what are we doing here? So I think it just, again, brings up additional questions about this world and this company and the really shady things that they're doing.
And what was interesting that I realized more this time watching is that Milchek tells her that her outie is happy when she asks the question. So she seems to be under the impression that she has an outie that is alive and well and living her life. But obviously we as the viewers know that it is very clear to the people in her life that she died. So then it begs this question of like, did they kidnap her and force her into this not even severed state, but kind of this state of slavery, really, of being controlled completely by the organization, and then being fed a narrative that we as the viewers know is false. And then why and how did she get there, and how did that happen, is like a whole backstory that we seem to have an awareness that something happened and something exists, and the truth is not being told to her either. And that is fascinating to think about, especially because it's so different from the other characters who genuinely have outside selves, and we have seen the outside selves as the viewers, but she doesn't, but she's being told that she does, and that's interesting too.
Basically, just don't trust Lumen
Mm-hmm.
ever.
Hmm.
Like, they're just always lying to you. And that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and one of the people that I think is being lied to, well, they're all probably being lied to in their wellness checks, but we get to meet outside self outer Irv, and I think in his wellness check from a previous episode, they insinuate that he like has a partner or has a family or something like that, right? But he is very much alone, and his outside self is very much alone, and I think that is interesting to think about. I mean, we had a inkling that the wellness checks were all just kind of like them being fed narratives about their outside selves. And we had a whole conversation about how Lumen can really just tell them anything. But I think you really get to see the delta and how much they are really just like making stuff up to feed each of these people something that feels comforting. We get to see how when in Mark is in his wellness check, they're telling him that like he like lights up every room that he steps into. And I'm like, I have not seen that from what we have observed in Mark's outside self. Nope, that's not the way that I would describe him. But it is what is comforting to imagine about this other version of yourself. And so that is emotionally convenient, shall we say, for them to do for these innies.
And Mark can set up a tent in under 3 minutes, which is pretty impressive. Like,
Can
that's a
he
fun
though?
fact. Probably not. He doesn't seem like the most
No.
outdoorsy type, but he did have a sleeping bag that Petey used. So maybe,
There you go.
before the tragedy with his wife happened, maybe they were really outdoorsy folks. I don't know. We may never know. But I do appreciate how we're constantly seeing that the lie that Lumen has told about the inside and the outside selves being completely separate, we're seeing that play out, because we are seeing, like, in Mark, he has emotional growth both inside and outside of Lumen. He is disgruntled at work inside, and outside he's considering quitting. So there's some sort of cohesion that he is experiencing across both of his selves. And then we're seeing in Irving, he has
Yeah.
a passion for art, it would seem. And there's also that image that he is haunted by that is in Lumen. And so it's just interesting how Lumen is obviously like pushing out this propaganda, this lie that the two sides are severed and they can't be reunited and nothing crosses that barrier. But we're seeing in the lives of these people that is absolutely wrong. And I'm very curious, because that's been building over the course of the season. Like, that's one of the really strong through lines over all 8 episodes, is that the two parts of these people aren't that dissimilar. Like, they're not that separate. And so I'm very curious to see how the finale of this season is going to grapple with that theme and kind of what's going to come from it.
Yeah. No, that's really, really interesting to tease out is what gets past that barrier in both of these characters that we've seen so distinctly, and why, and it's noteworthy that it's through kind of art. Once again, we keep coming back to this theme of like these images and thoughts that Irv has about the testing corridor, like that transcended this very clear procedure that has divided his brain. But those visuals, they float back and forth. And that's really fun to think about, of like, why, of all thoughts that could trickle back and forth, it's the ones that are artistic in nature that are able to pierce through that barrier. And I think it's interesting to think about for Mark how it's the book and the words of the book that he's continuously revisiting again and again that can trickle between his minds, because we see that obviously outside Mark has likely read the book and talked extensively with Brooken about it. And there's this fascination that he has and kind of was drawn to with the book in inside Lumen. And so the way that those can transcend and those ideas can transcend beyond these barriers is really like kind of hopeful. It's a very hopeful message, you know? Like art cannot be contained by medical procedures. It will find its way to you is kind of neat to think about.
Art is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And we've seen it, used for good. And then we've also seen it used for bad, like the propaganda and the stuff that O&D has created to help people stay in line, or I guess, and keep them somewhat content, and comforted. So we've seen the revolutionary nature of art and its ability to open up your mind and expand your horizons. And we've also seen how it can be used in a way that could potentially be harmful. And it's very interesting that both of those things are being explored in this show that's kind of all about these people stuck within this kind of evil corporation. And I don't know, I wouldn't have thought that art would be such a powerful theme within this context, which is just like corporate work, boxed structure. And art is actually really, really central to this show, which is surprising.
Mm-hmm. And kind of unexpected as well. So that's cool. That's really neat. Okay, other big things that happen in this episode that we wanted to discuss.
Dylan takes one for the team. He is, I don't know, kind of a hero in this episode. He is the one who's going to do the waffle party, eat some yummy waffles, have a weird eyes wide shut experience, and then go to the security room and pull those levers or whatever, turn those knobs, I guess, so that everybody can be awakened as their outside self. So I loved that exchange that he had with Helly. And she's like, no, it should be me who stays.
Yeah.
And Dylan is like, no, don't be silly. Like you're going to go. I got this. And I loved that because for most of the season, he's been kind of jokey, like he's chilling, he's there for, comedic timing, and obviously he's a good worker, all of that. And then he has this really emotional moment where he discovers that he has a kid, and he wants others to also have that opportunity that he had. And I love seeing his selflessness, because I think probably at the beginning of the season, I would have thought that he was a lot more selfish and just kind of like I don't know, a rambunctious guy who's not really tied to anything and doesn't really care that much about anybody else. And then we see in this episode that he cares very, very deeply about those that he works with and is willing to sacrifice something that he wants so that they can all experience that too. So I loved that character moment. It was so good, so tender. And then just the way that it's written it was like this perfect balance of like sweet and funny at the same time. So that was just such a great scene.
I love that he gets this moment to shine, as a character. And he's been someone who has been so focused on the perks, and he's the top performer in the department. And it's cool to see how that actually paid off. You know what I mean? That little detail about that they kept, making to be these fun moments at the beginning of the show is now paying off, because he is the one that would be best fit to earn these perks that then allow the team to be able to escape and stage their coup. And so even that's really fun to see, is like the way that some of those thread lines were sewn all the way back at the beginning of the show. But yeah, he's doing the dang thing. And he's stretching his arms to get that last lever. Once again, this episode ends on another juicy cliffhanger. And we will see how it gets answered in the next episode.
Yes. Will his sacrifice pay off is the question.
Okay. Any other big things before we give out some awards?
I'm trying to think what else happened in
Corbell
this.
gets fired.
Yeah.
We kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, that's a big deal though, and I mean just shout out to Patricia Arquette who does a great job as Harmony. Like she nails it, and you can see the the betrayal that she feels when she's fired, and then the anger and the sadness and all of the things, and there's so much wrapped up in her personality about working at Lumen and having this position, and it's all shattered, and then she has to become Mrs. Selvig again and go to this party. So I think it's such a great setup for the finale, because I mean, we know it's going to be dramatic whatever happens. And if Dylan is successful and Mark, I guess, like wakes up, I don't know, inside Mark wakes up as outside Mark. I don't know how to explain what's happening. If this whole procedure goes through and he's at this party and she's there and she knows what's going on, I think that that is going to be very dramatic. So I think that that's an exciting choice and just the perfect stage for some drama in the next episode, which is what we want.
Yeah, and I thought the way that the last scene unfolded was really fun because outside Mark isn't woken up yet because we see the intercutting back with Dylan. But he has this strange sense of conviction and almost like he knows already, even though we know that he doesn't know, but he's got this look in his eye and he's communicating with Mrs. Selvig in a way that feels almost like he's right on the brink of it. And the way that he says, you know, I might want to quit. Like, I don't know about my position in Lumen. It almost feels like Mark has been woken up, even though we know he hasn't yet. And that was like kind of a really fun tease, or to even like start to think about, oh my gosh, when he does fully wake up, what's going to happen? Because his outside self, even without being reintegrated or woken up, is already waking up in the way that only the outside Mark could, or as much as the outside Mark could. But I think that was fascinating to see too, of like outside Mark is so close to being fully awakened, and that being intercut with Dylan truly beginning to wake all of them up was, I think, some really smart ways that that scene was, giving us the tease.
I'm curious to see where the last episode goes, because obviously we've been building to this moment with both inside and outside Mark, where he is reawakened. And especially for outside Mark, coming to the realization that he doesn't need to be stuck anymore. It kind of seems like, when his wife died, he just stopped everything, and I don't know, he got stuck, which is fair. I mean, his whole world kind of crumbled. And so if he really is kind of like waking up and realizing he doesn't need to be stuck anymore and he can live his life, then that's really exciting for that character. It's just interesting that I feel like we've spent so little time with Mark that I don't feel invested in him, because we've seen inside Mark and outside Mark. And obviously they're the same person, but they're also different. So I don't know that I feel like the emotional connection to Mark making that incredibly important decision to potentially leave Lumen and start living his life again, just because we've spent time with these two separate sides of him. So I'm not as emotionally invested in his character journey. Intellectually, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so good for him. Way to go, Mark. But I don't feel any investment into his character. So that's just something else that I've been thinking about as maybe one of the difficulties of a show like this, because we're getting to know the characters. And in Mark's case, we're getting to know two different versions of him. And so it's at times, I think, difficult to be super invested in him just because it's almost like two different marks at times. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what that reintegration process could look like, and then how that could potentially all come together in the finale.
I think that the show would be more effective if we were invested in at least one of the two marks. Uh, you know, I just it like we talk about a lot. The characters are so much of our vehicle for going on this journey and this story, and so if we're not invested in them, it's just hard to feel connected to the stakes in general. Like we can put as much dramatic stakes, but if I don't care about who's in it, then it's hard for me to care. And just a thought that I was having was it would be so fun to have a version of this where like your Audi is like terrible and like a total asshole, but your inside self is so kind and gentle, and like
Mm.
we're invested in one side and we're kind of like not rooting for a reintegration, or like some way to like play with this concept would be really fun too, because the characters joke about that all the time. The inside selves of all of these characters are like, what if our outside selves are like total assholes, you know? And it'd be fun to even just think about seeing that play out, and how that inner dissonance that we would feel would be kind of fun as a viewer. Of like, I kind of don't want you to be woken up because you suck on the outside.
That would be really funny.
Yeah. Or if there's some way to have like the inside versions of themselves figure out how to like reclaim the power, because like right now the outside selves all have the power, so
Mm.
like how do we make the inside version be reality, and then the outside version is, you know, I don't know, some weird things to play with there, but we'll see.
I mean, there's already plenty of weirdness in the show. So, like,
It's too
why
much.
not?
It's too much. Explain to me one weird thing, then you can earn yourself more weird things. But if you don't give me one, I'm just flailing out here, floating in space, trying to
Mhm.
understand.
So it's almost like we need perks for the show. So, like, okay, show you pay off one weird thing and you get a finger trap. If you
Yes.
pay off two weird things, you can get, I don't know, whatever the next prize was. Finger traps, I don't think were the first prize. Anyway, we need a reward system for the show.
We do, because I have too many questions and I don't like to sit in questions that don't have answers. This is why I can't go to magic shows, because I need to know how it happened. I want the magic show to be an hour, and then I want the like 2 hour like behind the scenes. Let me walk you through.
Mm.
That does not work for
Yes.
their business model, but that's what I want.
That's also what I want, because the cool part to me is not the magic. The cool part to me is how they figured out how to do the thing. That's
Yes,
all I want, is the behind the scenes. I
me
don't care about
too.
the, like, showman part of it. I want to know the nuts and bolts of
Yes,
how they pulled that off, because that's
exactly.
fascinating. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Like I want to be wowed. Wow me first, but the wow needs to be accompanied by the explanation, please.
Mm.
So really,
Mhm.
Severance is one big magic show, is what I'm hearing. And I think we're supposed to ooh and ah, and instead you and I are like, but why?
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah, I think that's something that I keep wondering is, like, what is the purpose of this show? And I mean, obviously, like, art can be created for like, art can be created for art's sake, and that's totally fine. And um it's a very creative world, and so, like, that's worthwhile in and of itself, I think. But as far as these characters go, what are what journey are they going on? We've seen little transformations here and there. Obviously, like, Mark has undergone some sort of transformation in stops and starts, but I don't know. And then, like, what are we working toward? They're trying to wake themselves up, but then there's a second season.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, I don't I don't know what we're doing here. And then I don't know how you're going to end this season in a way that's satisfying and gives room for a whole second season. It's just not making sense to me. So I think that that's just another question of It's that like greater purpose question that Irv was trying to
Mm,
help Helly out with early on in the show. So I'm
yeah.
still back there. The visit to the perpetuity wing did not help me. But maybe the finale will. I don't know.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear your feelings. I'm really excited. I've been waiting for this moment.
I know you have, man. I know you have.
Okay, should we give out some awards?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. The first category is Employee of the Week. What is your choice?
I gotta give it to Dylan. He sacrifices for the team, and I love that. I love Dylan as the hero.
That is my choice too. Dylan for choosing to stay behind for the team.
Yeah.
What I love about him is that when the others are suggesting something different, he like sasses them back, and that's his way of saying like, "No, really, guys, it's okay. Like, I got it." He doesn't make it weird. He's just like, "Nah, this is no, don't even bring it up, y'all. I'm gonna do it. This is my role to play." It's really cool. But you mentioned this earlier, and I just want to give a shout out to like the fact that Helly thinks about this for Dylan, and especially like him being able to see his son. It's just like really sweet to see that thoughtfulness that she has for him too. Oh, the characters are bonding. The next category is move the needle moment. What is your choice?
The board firing Harmony.
She is off the charts now.
She is
Unhinged. Truly.
Honestly, I'm here for unhinged Harmony. Like, you don't know what she's going to do. And I think that that's fun.
Mhm.
She can now be an agent of chaos if she so chooses. And that's exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. And she has the conviction to do it too. I also love in the scene where she gets fired that her and Milchek clearly have like no warmth between them at all. It was purely like a business relationship because he is so icy in the way that he treats her, likely because she's bossed him around so many times and this is his way to stick it back to her. But it's fascinating to see that there was like no warm fuzzies with the two of them, and it just feels different from like there's a little bit more rapport potentially between Corbell and Grainer, but between Milchek and Corbell, none at all, like zero.
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating. I'm still so curious about Milchek. Like, if there is any character that I want to deep dive into, he is probably at the top of my list. Like, obviously, I want to know about Bert because he's one of my faves, and just Christopher Walken is hilarious. But Milchek is fascinating, and I don't know how to read him, and he could be so many things, and like his motivation is totally unknown. And so
Yeah.
I want to know more about him.
Yeah, he's so fascinating. And I think he has clearly showcased that he does things independently and kind of makes choices on his own that are not following protocol at all. And that makes him fun to the plot too, because he's kind of a free agent that will make choices that can really shake up this plot. And so that's fun to imagine what role he will play next.
And it's also interesting because presumably he was the one that turned Harmony into the board for not following the rules. And
Mhm.
he has also been following in her footsteps of not following the rules. So
Mhm.
his willingness to follow rules at some times and then break rules at other times is interesting. And like, it's hard to pin down his calculus though of when do you break rules and when do you follow rules, because you're not sure who it benefits. And he's so interesting to me. I want to see a lot of him in the finale. I don't know that we're going to, but
Yeah.
I want to see a lot of him. Anyway, we're on
Mhm.
awards, not what we're looking forward to. Please go ahead.
No, my choice for the move the needle moment is the trippy Nutcracker show for Dylan.
It's
Yeah,
so weird.
just weird stuff. Weird stuff. I think my choices in this category have been more about moving the needle of my feelings about the show.
Oh, I see.
Because they're all the weird things that happen, but they feel like they move the needle of the show too, because I'm like, oh, there's more weird things that could happen in this show that I need to think about now. You
Mm.
know?
And mine have tended to be things that move the plot forward because I don't I don't care about the weird things.
Yeah, this is good. It's a good balance
Yeah,
for us.
we have many different interpretations of this award this
Yes.
season of TVNS, so that's exciting.
The next category is achievement and corporatees. What is your choice?
I want to give this to Harmony when she tells Mark, "I Lumen needed this," and I loved that. Obviously, she needed their numbers up, but she couldn't say that to Mark, so she had to change it to the
Nice.
company needed this.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Wrapping up her own self interest under the guise of the larger corporate entity. It's very, very smart.
Mhm.
They do that a
Yep.
lot in workplaces.
Yeah. Yes.
My choice for this category is Milchek to Miss Casey when she's asking him a bunch of questions. He responds with, "I'm sorry, I just have so much to do today."
Yes. Oh,
Ugh.
it's so good.
Fastest way to swerve on any task or conversation.
I'm so sorry. I'm swamped.
I'm so swamped today. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. Thanks for being a
Yeah,
human in this very
love
human
it.
moment. Uh,
Nah, dude, there's no room for humanity in
no,
work. No, get that out of here.
I would rather him just be like, I gotta go. I can't have this conversation right now. I don't want to have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
But instead, we do these like annoying, passive aggressive, weird, shady ways of communicating that feel like I'm going on a rant. We will not go down this path.
It's trying to soften the harsh reality and make it palatable,
I
but
hate
it's
that.
still crappy. Yeah, like, let's just be direct, shall
My
we?
inner northeastern self is like, just lay it on me. Like we can take it. Don't wrap it up in this nice, beautiful sheen. Just say it how it is. I will respect you more for it.
It's so satisfying in work though when you find another person who's like that and you can
Mhm.
just be like direct and you don't need to do all of the fluffy stuff. Oh,
Oh, it's so
it's so
great.
satisfying because it takes a lot of work to do all of the fluffy stuff rather than just like saying how it is, you know?
Yeah. And trusting that the other person will not
Mhm.
interpret or
Yeah.
not won't necessarily get their feelings hurt or feel like it's a personal attack. It's just like, no, this could have been better. It's like, okay, yeah, let me go make
Yeah,
it better now. Cool. Thanks for the feedback.
absolutely. Yeah.
It is very interesting. And I find that it's very cultural to parts and regions of the US too, based on where the like culture of the city is and like their tendency to be direct or not direct, and then how that like trickles into the workplace. Because even though we all are like sometimes remote workers and we've got people from so many different like regions for where they grew up, you kind of the workplace defaults to the culture I find of the city that it's in generally, and so that's been really fascinating to see in like the difference between working in New York versus in Texas versus in Washington State. Very different.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yep. Okay, looking ahead, what are you hoping to see in the season finale? We've almost made it.
I just I don't know how they're going to do this in a way that's satisfying. Is where I'm at. Like I can see a lot of ways for the finale to go wrong. So I'm just curious what they're going to do. I would love to see Bert again because he is just like my ride or die fave. I want to see more of Milchek because he's fascinating. If we get some more goat content, that's great. I would love some goat yoga, but that is not necessary. Yeah, I am just curious how they're gonna do this. And then I think I've mentioned it before, but like how does that finale then color the entire season and reveal what the thesis of this show is? Because like we've talked about, it's a very interesting premise. There's some interesting thoughts about corporate culture and how we have acclimated to that. And there's just all kinds of other like themes and stuff that are really interesting within it. But I'm curious to see if the finale will give us additional context about what this show is trying to say, and almost like what its point of view is. Because I don't know, it's a lot of interesting ideas, but it doesn't feel like a cohesive thesis to me. So I'm just curious where they're going to go.
It will be fascinating to reflect on all of the puzzle pieces we've collected on the way in the show through the lens of the finale. We often talk about this when we are reviewing seasons of television, but like where they choose to land the plane is often such a lens to view everything else that took us on this journey. And it ultimately is the thesis or the point of view of what the show believes about people and society and our characters and who they will ultimately choose to be in the end. And so far we're seeing, for example, that the show is seeing these characters really rise up and advocate for themselves, the inside versions of themselves. And that says something about like who we are as people, and how when we begin to open our minds to new ideas, like they can take a hold and they can really introduce change into something that feels truly hopeless, and that's really exciting to see. But where will these characters land and what choices will they make? We will find out in the finale. I'm excited. Next episode will be a real fun one, a real juicy fun one to hear all of your thoughts about how this unfolds.
Yeah, because I don't know. I know that everybody was real upset after the finale, everybody that I talked to. So I'm curious to see what everyone was so upset about.
You like to be a contrarian, so you might actually love it. Who knows?
That's true. I don't know. We'll find out.
You never know. You could be like, this was the right ending for the show. Guys,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
It had to end this way. I will be on the edge of my seat.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Because I do like to be a contrarian. You are correct.
Yes, exactly. We'll be here. Yeah, we'll be here.
We'll find out.
To cover episode 9. But for now, today, this is our review and discussion of episode 8 of Severance. You can find it available on Apple TV+. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today as we continued our journey through Severance Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about episode 8. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TVNSPod, or you can email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. This episode was edited by Melvin Benson from Cinematic Doctrine. Check out his show for more great movie and TV discussions. We'll be back soon to discuss the finale, episode 9 of Severance Season 1. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you again real soon.